My name is Kim Chambers. I have 3 girls, and they're very good girls. I'm very thankful for that. I guess a lot of that might come from me. I always try to be nice and kind and to work hard. I did a lot of that. I was a housekeeper, I guess, cleaning rooms and motels. I've only been out of work maybe 3 years. And when I left work, I was doing 23 rooms a day.
Where did you look for support when you needed it the most?
COTS.
COTS is the kind of organization where it began as a very small, scrappy group of people who were volunteers. It's back, imagine the fall of 1982. It's already getting dark quickly, September, October, and cold. And for the first time, there were people sleeping on benches in City Hall Park. These were local kids who had come back from Vietnam but never really came home. They didn't get the help or the support they needed. They were not always welcomed with open arms. And they just sort of spiraled down and wound up in City Hall Park. Bernie Sanders was the mayor. His key aide was Jim Rader, and they were worried about what to do. But so were community members. So they convened a group, and basically this committee on temporary shelter was formed to find a place so that people wouldn't freeze to death on the streets. But here's the cool thing. So this group of volunteers, nobody's ever done shelter. How do you do it? I don't know. Somebody call the Red Cross. Maybe they'll have cots. We'll get some cots. So they borrow some cots from the Red Cross. And they go and they ask, hey, can we open an emergency shelter? Can we run it just for this winter? By December 24th, Christmas Eve, we opened our doors, and it was 22 degrees, and the people who showed up were all older guys or struggling men who had served in Vietnam. So shortly after veterans began showing up the next year, it was just people who weren't earning enough money. All over town, rents were starting to spike, and this was very much driven by IBM growth and expansion of local colleges. And caught in the middle were the working folks who were either minimum wage or whatever you would call minimum wage or low wage. Suddenly they lost their footing in the market. So what shifted was the volume. Suddenly we had more single adults, but we had more families with children, mainly single moms. And we realized that mixing them in with the population of single adults we were serving was not going to work. It was not appropriate. So we began looking around, and some of the volunteers, the early board members, noticed that there was an abandoned firehouse that was being heated on North Champlain Street because the city didn't want the pipes to freeze. And so began the creation of the first family shelter in Burlington called the COTS, Firehouse Family Shelter. And it was basically talking the city into letting us use it. So they sold it to us for $1 and converted it into now what remains a key resource for families with kids that don't have a place to go.
We have a shelter for single individuals that has capacity for 36 people and some overflow in extreme cold weather. We have 2 family shelter locations that house 15 families altogether. We also operate a transitional housing program that has 7 folks, and we have 89 units of permanent affordable housing.
And then another layering on that is a huge increase, well, percentage-wise, of the people struggling with acute and severe mental illness who began to show up at our doors. People who otherwise would have maybe been at a place like the Waterbury Hospital. Those beds don't exist anymore. So when people with the best policy intentions, we're going to shut down institutions, let's not institutionalize anybody, they funded services in the community for people, but not the residential component. So, 30 years ago, there were 700 beds at Waterbury, and then it went down to 500, 450, 150. But they never offset the loss of those beds with residential care. So now somebody struggling with paranoid schizophrenia, we're not equipped or set up to serve that population. It is not within our wheelhouse. We don't have the training. We do our best. But a significant number of the people we see on the single adult side are struggling with one or another mental health issue. It distorts the sense of who's homeless in some ways, because you read about the person who's homeless that smashed the cop car or took a machete or whatever, and that is part of it, but it doesn't take away the other people who work as day labor, who aren't struggling with mental health, or the families with children. And each time the population has shifted, COTS has responded by trying to adapt our programs and our approach.
Oh, my name is Elizabeth Whalen. I've been here about 4.5 years. You've got to have empathy, you've got to have compassion, and that grows even more when you get in here. It's like you learn a lot. All of us do, I think, on a whole. It's a day-to-day change, and nothing stays the same for very long. But it's something I love. I have a heart for these type of people, and it's very rewarding. I think if anybody is going to be, in this type of business, that it not only helps the clients, it also makes you grow. It's it's an experience.
So the whole motto at COTS is not what's the problem. The sky is always falling. There's never enough money, the rain, that this president, that president, or whatever it is. We focus on what can we do right now to change, to fix whatever the issue is, and not wait for this grant or that. Just instead of redefining and defining the problem over and over again, let's define it what's the fix? People spend so much time focusing on what the problem is and not what the solution is. And sometimes it's right there. So it's just the orientation is, okay, if you're gonna bring up a problem, what's the solution? Some of our best ideas have come from the people we serve, things we didn't think of. We were one of the first organizations in the country to have voicemail for the homeless. And it became, because years ago I used to smoke, and I was talking to a woman, and I said, what would you, she was outside, we were smoking. I said, what would you change if there was one thing different that you could do at COTS? And she didn't know what part of COTS I worked in. And she said, well, when I came here with my daughter, you all told us that homelessness isn't who we are. It's just a time in our life. And, not to focus on that. But then when I've applied for a job, they have to call the firehouse and it says, hi, you've reached COTS Firehouse Family Shelter. So other people don't know that homeless isn't who we are. We never get the callbacks. Or if I have a medical thing, it's right on that answering machine. And I thought, wow. So we went to a local phone provider. It was called Frontier, I think Frontier Communications, and they gave us a ton of voicemail boxes. So even if you were looking for a job, it just says, "Hi, you've reached Steve at whatever." Or if you're not looking for a job and you're elderly and you're hoping one of your kids will finally call you or the doctor will get back to you, you got your own number. It's not going to get missed, and there's no shame. It's all about affirming, who is this person in front of us that needs help right now.
I'm really happy with what I've come to. Yeah. And I like living here. Makes me feel safe.
The worst thing anyone can do is give up or accept the world the way it is. Like, there are going to be defeats or setbacks, but to keep your eye on the way you want it to be, not what is. And that's what sort of fuels you. So you're jazzed up even when you're 64 years old. You still believe, like, you're still into it. I mean, now I want to go talk to Jim because I just had an idea for the Housing Resource Center. The good thing is there is always an answer. And even, like, think about in your life as you go ahead, as you get into a business or whatever, even if the first idea doesn't work, the second or the third, the best defense against bad ideas is better ones, just like, and you just keep throwing them, spitball it and one will work. But the worst thing any of us can do, whatever your issue is, whether it's the environment, poverty, housing, is to give up. Then we are truly lost. So hang in there.